Christ was crucified, the holiest site in Christendom was seized and defiled. The Pope beseeched all Christians to unite in a great crusade.
Go forward boldly as Knights of Christ, hurrying swiftly to defend the Church.
His call was heeded by a new order of knights who pledged their lives to retake the Holy Land. Warrior monks fighting for God and betrayed in the end by their own church. In 1189, the Holy Land is a battleground. Two armies, Christian and Muslim, each fight with God on their side. At the place of honor in the Christian lines, Gérard de Riefort commands Allah's worthiest foe, the Knights Templar.
These men, brave and rigorous in arms, have struck hard with frequent attacks, both secretly and openly, so that those who previously terrorized us now regard themselves as most happy if they are permitted to live in peace.
So terrible are the Templars that the great Muslim general Salah ad-Din, as generous as he is shrewd, has shown them no mercy. The fiery heart of the enemy, he calls the Templars. These, more than all the others, destroy the Arab religion and slaughter us. With fire in his heart, Gérard de Riefort prepares to lead his knights once more into battle. 70 years before, the Templars, this scourge of God, was only 8 men strong. On the road to Jerusalem, 2 French nobles saw the light. Hugh de Payon and Godfrey de Saint-Omer, traveling with 6 other knights, vowed to safeguard the progress of pilgrims to the Holy Land. Reaching Jerusalem, retaken from the Muslims, they hurried to the Holy Sepulchre, the very site, as all good Christians knew, where their Savior was crucified. There, as all good pilgrims did, they etched a cross in its stones. The Christian king of Jerusalem was so impressed by their piety that he granted them quarters in his own palace, itself built, it was said, on the site of the Temple of Solomon. The band of brothers came to be called the Poor Knights of the Temple of Solomon, the Templars. They took a vow of poverty and took as their seal the image of 2 knights sharing a horse. Nurtured by the Pope himself, the new order flourished. To buy their own salvation, noblemen gave the Templars armor, horses, and land. At bases throughout Europe, the knights enlarged their ranks and trained for battle. Soon, from their own storehouses and monasteries, the Templars were sending supplies and men to the Holy Land, the sons of nobles who had spent their youth preparing for war. Among them, a young Flemish knight, Gerard de Rifort. Gerard had gone to Jerusalem to claim his fortune, a rich bride. Before he arrived, his betrothed was sold to another man. Gerard now wed his fate to the Templars. Other knights hired themselves out as freelances. Other knights defiled themselves with wealth, pillage, rape. As a Templar, Gerard donned the white tunic of poverty, humility, and chastity. In a ceremony both secret and sacred, Gerard committed himself to God.
You seek what is a great thing, but you see us from the outside. You cannot know the austerities of the order. For when you wish to be on this side of the sea, you will be sent to the other side. And if you want to sleep, you will be awoken. And if you wish to eat, you must go hungry. Now, decide, good gentle brother, if you could tolerate all these hardships.
From this day, his life would be ruled by two books, the Holy Bible and the Templar Manual.
Too much talk is not without sin. We altogether prohibit idle words and wicked outbursts of laughter. No brother should swear when angry or calm, nor should he ever say an ugly or vile word.
Unlike other knights, the Templars cut their hair short and grew beards. And unlike other knights, they vowed absolute chastity, a vow reinforced by their pledge never to bathe or to change their sheepskin drawers. On a crisp morning in October, an order passed through their camp. Gerard de Rifort made ready for battle. He first donned a quilted jacket to pad his torso, then 20 pounds of mail, made of thousands of interlocking ringlets, small enough to deflect an arrow. Over his armor, a surcoat to protect the metal from rain, sand, and the Mediterranean sun. Then a hood of mail to guard his neck. And last, his iron helmet.
You could see there an incomprehensible number of armed men. There were so many shining coats of mail, so many glittering helmets, so many noble horses neighing, so many white mantles, so many knights of great probity and daring, so many banners that never had such a crowd appeared to be reckoned up.
The Templars rallied by their Grand Master and their banner, black and white, a reminder of the battle between good and evil they were called to fight. Its motto stiffened their resolve, not for ourselves, but for God. Gerard led his Templars in prayer with the Psalm of David.
Not unto us, O Lord. Not for ourselves, but for God.
The two enemies were as unlike in warfare as they were in faith. The Crusader knights fought at close quarters, hand to hand and heavily armed. The Templars fought as a formation. Their discipline was scorned by their comrades, but respected by their foe.
Their first attack is the most terrible. In going, they are the first. In returning, the last.
Lightly armed and cool-headed, the Muslim horsemen struck like hornets and fled just as fast. Unlike the Crusaders, they felt no shame in fighting at arm's length, nor in living to fight another day. The Pope would hear how his knights fought that day.
On the 4th of October, we joined battle. Altogether, we were 4,000 knights and 100,000 foot soldiers. However, our enemy Saladin had up 100,000 knights. Nevertheless, we were armed with the sign of the Holy Cross.
The Templars charged. They held their lances low to pierce Arab armor. Coming to blows, they lashed out with their swords. Those who fell to the ground fought on, with sword or axe. Victory or death, or disgrace.
Should any of them, for any reason, turn his back to the enemy, or come forth alive from a defeat, or bear arms against the Christians, he is severely punished. The white mantle with the red cross, which is the sign of his knighthood, is taken away, and he is cast from the society of his brethren, and eats his food on the floor for the space of a year.
No knights were disgraced this day. In their eyes, God fought with them. Allah abandoned his followers, and his followers abandoned the field.
They fled before our swords, and we pursued them up to their very tents. We managed to kill 500 of Saladin's knights, far more than we had hoped. While we were engaged in battle with Saladin, 5,000 knights left the city and made a sudden attack on us. We still managed to hold up against Saladin on one side and offer courageous resistance on the other, before retreating to our camp. But for God, our men were killed on that day.
Among them, their Grand Master, Gerard de Rifort. The siege went on. Among the Crusaders, food was scarce, disease rife. Christians died or deserted, but the Templars stayed. It was beneath knights to do such menial work as breaking down walls. Instead, they undermined Acre with money. With Templar gold, the Crusaders bought siege machines. Led by the English king, Richard the Lionheart, the Christians spent the summer of 1190 trying to breach Acre. They filled in the moat and brought up battering rams. They wheeled a siege tower toward the defenders, but the walls were too strong. After 2 years of holding out, the city was defeated by starvation. In July of 1191, Acre yielded. month later, ignoring the Templars' advice, Richard pushed on to Jerusalem and was beaten. For another century, holy warriors battled each other for the Holy Land. Across the sands of Palestine, Christian armies, multitudes up to 100,000 strong, flowed and ebbed. Between the tides of invasion, the Templars held fast in their fortresses. No other knights knew the land or the enemy so well. As warriors and diplomats, the Templars kept the Muslims at bay. In 1291, 100 years after the fall of Acre, the Templars were again fighting for the city from inside. Unlike the defenders before them, they refused to surrender. Like them, they perished. The Templar Code forbade the expense of burying a knight. Instead, his body should be thrown to the dogs. At Acre, the dogs ate well. With Acre went the Holy Land. After 2 centuries, the ordeal of driving a people from their own soil proved too great. 20,000 Templars were left in the land they fought for, their souls already departed. As an order, the Templars survived and thrived. While in Palestine, they had become skilled not only as warriors and diplomats, but as merchants. So rich had they grown that the Templars, sworn to poverty, were now bankers to Europe. Their power rivaled kingdoms. Now, the very church for which they once fought so bravely turned on them. Philip IV, King of France, feared their power and coveted their wealth. With the Pope, he plotted their ruin.
They're so outrageously proud that one can hardly look them in the face. Tell me why the Pope permits them to misuse the riches which are offered them in God's service. It is a pity, in my view, that we do not rid ourselves of them for good.
In October of 1307, on the unfortunate morning of Friday the 13th, the Templars of France were rounded up. They were tortured until they confessed. Their crime, heresy. They were burned at the stake, and the proud order of the Templars went up in smoke.
The whole episode of the fall of the Knights Templar is a matter of conflicting historical controversy.
We do know that when they left the Holy Land, the order had increased in numbers and power, and by the beginning of the 1200s, they had returned to Europe, and the Knights Templar then became the dominant financial force in Europe.
The Templars were the people that loaned the money. Well, of course, the popes and people to whom the money was, they owned the money, they could get rid of their debt by getting rid of the Templars, and they did.
But in addition to the issue of debt, the Templars were accused for embracing certain religious doctrines they had picked up during their time in the Holy Land. It is said they began to combine the teachings of Christianity with the influence of Islam and Judaism, as well as spin-off cults known as the Yazidi and the Hashashin.
What people did not understand is they had adopted the teachings of the ancient esoteric religions.
And they were decreed by the Pope in 1308 in Europe and 1309 in England that the Templars should be disbanded, if not hunted down and killed.
Many Templars were tortured under the Inquisition and even burned at the stake for heresy. But some of them escaped.
And a lot of them, I think, went underground, because by no means did the dragnet, if you will, capture all of them. A lot of them fled to Scotland.
They had to go into hiding. And one of the places they found to hide was the Masonic Lodge.
There's no question but that the Knights Templar are the real fulcrum of the latter development of Freemasonry. And that's not saying that Freemasonry did not pre-exist the Knights Templar. It did, as the builders, as guilds of builders throughout Europe.
It is from the influence of the Knights Templar that many believe Masonry began to develop its modern philosophy. A philosophy literally carved in stone and found in one of the most intriguing monuments of the Western world. Just outside of Edinburgh, Scotland, is the Rosslyn Chapel, a place that may well provide a door to understanding Masonry, the Knights Templar, and the ancient plan for America.
It very conclusively demonstrates a profound relationship between Scotland and the Templars and the Freemasons, which is not really any big revelation. But of course, the whole idea is that the three things go together.
The chapel was built in the 15th century by William St. Clair. The tomb of his ancestor of the same name, and who died a century earlier, is found within. His name, as it appears, William St. Clair, Knight Templar, is believed to be a link between the Templars and the Scottish Masons who built this mysterious chapel.
The chapel the foundation stone was laid in 1446, and it was finished about 1492. So it took 50 odd years to build. And the interesting fact is that William St. Clair, the builder, was 50 when the job started, and he died when it stopped. So this man was uniquely old, because in medieval times you wouldn't expect to live perhaps more than 35 years or so. But William St. Clair was into his 90s, so he was a remarkable character all the way around. Everything about him was remarkable, including the legacy he's left us.
The legacy of Rosslyn Chapel seems to be the very essence of the Templar belief and that of secret societies everywhere. The removal of all boundaries concerning world religion. As noted before, this Gnostic theme is well captured in Dan Brown's best-selling book, The Da Vinci Code, a work that has created worldwide controversy. During our visit to Rosslyn Chapel, we encountered Erwin Lutzer, author of the book, The Da Vinci Deception.
Of course, as we know, Rosslyn Chapel has become famous because of the Da Vinci Code. And you have people coming from all over the world staring at its ceilings, trying to crack its codes. As we walk through it, it's very probable that the Masons who built it had a field day. They decided that they were going to combine all kinds of mythological elements along with the Bible. So you have Masonic elements in the chapel, you have some pagan elements, you have Christian elements, and they're all thrown together.
Rosslyn Chapel is probably one of the most extraordinary buildings in the world. It is like a Disneyland of Masonry and Rosicrucianism.
I think the chapel is an enigma. It satisfies the needs of a great number of people who come to Rosslyn for a whole raft of reasons. If you're a Knight Templar or a Freemason, if you are an American looking for some links with the New World before it was discovered, if you're a Sinclair, if you're religious or an art historian or an architectural historian, an esoteric, Rosslyn has got something for you. If you're a paganist, we have over 110 green men. Most churches will have 1 or 2 green men, but we have over 100 of them.
The green man is a representation of an ancient fertility god, just one of the many pagan icons in the chapel.
And so Rosslyn, not only does it offer a great many things to different people, but it also offers a mystery.
The mystery, he explains, is that Rosslyn Chapel, while designed as a Christian church, is filled with so many religious symbols, a person is confused about what they are compelled to worship.
It's like having a VCR. You know pretty much what it's meant to do, but you can't actually make it work properly. No one can follow the instructions. And the chapel is like that. We know it's a church. That's fair enough. But it has so many other little stories connected with it and mysteries, and the carvings are not particularly clear, and they can be interpreted one way or another. And so for everything you see in the chapel, there's probably 3 answers. And that, I think, is its great appeal.
Centuries after its construction, researchers continue to question the overarching message of the chapel. What was the intent of its design?
It may have had a point for the Masons who made it, in the sense that there were various messages that were conveyed.
Essentially, Masonry's doctrine, foundationally, and they will even say this publicly, is universalism, which is the idea that basically all religions are the same. It doesn't matter what religion you are, as long as you're sincere and devout in your beliefs, and that all men, they say, may gather at the hospitable altars of Masonry no matter what their religious belief. So, in that sense, they're very much part of pushing toward a one-world religion, and to view biblical Christianity as basically the enemy. Because biblical Christianity makes unique claims about itself that none of these other groups, the Rosicrucians, the Masons, any of these groups, will acknowledge.
Some of us are convinced it's important that Christianity be held distinct from some of the elements that are found here in Rosslyn Chapel. After all, the message of Jesus Christ is very, very unique. But throughout history, you've always found those who want to blend together various ideas, various organizations, and various religions. And here at the Rosslyn Chapel, people can come and they can practically see anything that they want.
But within the monument is evidence, not only of what the Templars and Masons came to believe, but perhaps a reflection of things to come. The promise of a land where one day their ancient hope might be fulfilled. For inside Rosslyn Chapel, along with the haunting imagery, is evidence of the New World prior to the discovery of Columbus.
Well, there is this window which is decorated. The window frame is decorated with Indian corn or maize, and the chapel was built in the 15th century. So it is strange that Indian corn, which wasn't ever grown here, is used as a motif.
The chapel was finished around 1492, the same year Columbus is thought to have come to America. This would mean the carvings would have been completed beforehand. But how did the Masons who built this chapel have knowledge of Indian corn, a crop not grown in Europe and indigenous to the New World?
Who knows? There are lots of mysteries about this chapel.
Another mystery is the presence of aloe cactus plants, also indigenous to America, and like the Indian corn, carved along the arches of the chapel. But even with these, academics have been skeptical. Yet a third carving, a trefoil plant, or type of clover, is said by Rosslyn Chapel director Stuart Beattie to have convinced one skeptic in particular.
The trefoil plant is quite interesting. Rosslyn Chapel does have carvings of plants that we believe came from the New World before Columbus discovered America. We've had these plants investigated, and a botanist from the university had a good look at them, and he wasn't particularly convinced, as academics need to be. He wasn't 100% sure that these plants were in fact aloe cactus and sweet corn. And I think his logic was that the people who went to the New World and recorded these images on parchment brought those images back, they would have been translated to wood and then subsequently translated to stone. And it's that process which removes them from the original 2 or 3 times, which means that there are discrepancies that can build in. And so, being an academic, he was uncomfortable with these images. And when looking around the chapel, he suddenly, his eyes lit up, and he came and got me, and he said, whilst I was fairly unsure about the sweet corn and aloe cactus as being honestly genuine, I have found a trefoil plant on what would have been the outside of the chapel at the time, but is now the baptistry, that would only have been found in the New World. Therefore, I am much more comfortable to say that the other plants are also honest and true.
When the Templars were arrested in Europe, many of them are said to have escaped with a great fleet of ships that were never to be found.
The Christian church had once condemned war until Christian soldiers fought for God. From the ashes of the Templars, this ember would smolder. The idea of a holy war, a crusade, a time when God takes sides. In 1314, Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, was burned at the stake. Legend says he cursed the Pope and the King. "Next year," he swore, "I shall bring you to stand judgment before the Almighty." Within a month, the Pope was dead. 7 months later, the King of France fell from his horse while hunting and died. Perhaps God had chosen sides.